Oh yeah. 당원주 담아봐라고 때 랑쪽이 된다 마치발 사지 손에서 해지된 요기된 사지 손들도 다 해지된서 된날 쳐봐줘봐다 좀바 당자와 현대에 보고 어떠서 되자 라종을 추주 중요로 안에 좀바 당자 현대에 보고 어들 해지된서 되자 다 종이 된날에 내가 조금 상바도 상주고 센터 양답에 따라서도 용거와 아니 조기 때도 마 두두진 소아들에 어때 사제송 되게도
네 tambo들의 니바
tambo들 해지든 라 추주도 좀바 당자당 현대 예보고 어떠저래 원론다
전전 예보고 그 세나
제르미싱 알아도 세기 주로 앞에 내야서들 걔네들 다 이뉴스도 돼
그래서
레지던스 어떤데 다 어떤 주주 좀 받아서들 다 중국에 되는 거 상세 한다면서 나와서들 아니 중국에 되는 타만 마두고 가지고
두두셰
두두셰들
오케이
다 동부 레지던스라 손에 쳐봐줘봐 좀 받아자와 쳐봐줘봐 좀 받아자와 너들 예보고 사지 송도
오케이 예
다 너무 줘봐는데 했었다 지금 라마 나라 샤셀로서 어때 줘봐줘 중으로 했었다 지금 라마 나라 샤셀로 지금 라마 나라 샤셀로 쉐바오사 줘봐줘 지금 라마 나라 샤셀와 이상 줘봐줘 중으로 했어 다니바 좀 당자와네 자유송로 구진 해비된 제세 담반나진 하빌라 걔네 타는 중국에 제대로는 다게 쉐바샤서 어때 좀 당자와 자유송로 구 제비된 게 요인지로와 제세 담반나진 하빌라 상주sen 걔네 타는 중은 다와 어때 제대로는 다게 쉐바샤 어때 좀 당자 저는 그런 내가 요새 지시게 있어 어때 제대로 좀 당자지 되네
예
제대로 다게 쉐바샤스 쉐바오스 소바냐 바고스 근데 바고던데 가다 세비 들라마샤시 단주 대여샤시 전바이 자와지비 랑라이 덤비 걔네 다다 당이 지뉴스 근데 바고스 와투고서 So
today we are looking at the text called The Three Principles of the Path by Lama Tsongkhapa. And when we look at Ngüchu Dhammabadra's commentary, we find that he breaks this down into three separate categories. The first category contains three categories, and those categories are the expression of worship, a promise to compose, and then a need for the listener to listen well, or to pay attention. So that's the first category, and it's I believe translated as activity, or the activities, introductory activities. The second category is the actual practices, and the actual practices refer to renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view. So these are the three categories that will be explained in the main import of this text. And then the third category is a summary of the essence, a summary of the various pathways. So these are the three categories. So we'll begin with the first line that says reverence to the holy gurus, reverence to the holy lamas. So this falls into the category of the expression of worship. So this is the first category in the activities section, as we're translating it, which is the first category of Ngüchu Dhammabadra's commentary. The next I will explain as best I can the essential import of all the victor's teachings, the path praised by the holy bodhisattvas, best entrance for those fortunate ones who seek freedom. This is the promise to compose. So this is the desire to compose, the promise to compose, that I will, as best I am able to, compose this text about these points. So when we look at this stanza, these lines refer to those three principal paths. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, I will explain as best I can the essential import of all the victor's teaching. So this refers to renunciation, the desire to definitely emerge. The path praised by all the holy bodhisattvas. This refers to bodhicitta, the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And the best entrance for those fortunate ones who seek freedom. This is referring to the correct view of emptiness, or the correct view. So implicitly, in those three lines that Geshe Rinpoche promises to compose, we find in the three pathways that are explained in this text. And then the next deals with the student and the need to listen in an appropriate way, to pay attention, I think would be the literal translation. So then it says, listen with clear minds, you lucky people, who aspire to the path that pleases Buddhas, etc. So this falls into the category which is for the practitioner or the person who is listening to pay attention, to listen well. And then we then get into, then Rinpoche, the nye, the ewa tambo ewa sum. Ewa the sumba, the nye, the then kabaka, the lamsum, kabaka do.
나도 들어왔다. 전에 해지든 유기든 송으로.
네, 레지든.
해지든 들어 송으로도 저거 좀 당자와 현대에 받고 왔어.
네, 뉴턴에 받고 kabaka do.
근데 다다 이진연서 어디 산다.
네, 이 selbo.
이진연서 어디가 도래. 그 우들 마다 유기든 레오로.
Less so. Okay, so after it says, listen with clear minds, you lucky people, then it gets into the body of the text where the principle, those paths are explained. So we have these three categories, the activities and then the actual practices and a summary. The first category has three categories, expression of worship, a promise to compose, and the need for one to listen well and pay attention. The next category, the actual practices, refers to renunciation, bodhicitta, and the wisdom of realizing the correct view. And that begins right after this, you lucky people. Dixon.
다 레지던도 송 차지로. 다 유기든도 송래. 도미니리니. 네 제바제바 다 뒤드셰바스.
Okay.
다 제바제바 들러와데 내눈셰바 상주지 센셰바 양답이 도와셰바 송도. 어떤 hinge 보시라도 돼.
So the second category, it states that there are actually two categories that begin. And those two categories are a broad explanation and then a much more condensed explanation. And what is there a broad explanation and a condensed explanation of? It is of renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view. So this is the first category within that second category that is presented in the commentary.
와 담바 중에 되더라와데 제바시바 되듯이바 니지 제바시바들라 내주시바 샤주 센시바 양다베 다와시바 송지 다 담바 내주시바들라 송도 송 내주 고비 주센 내주 제비타 내주 제비세 what is on the
so then when going back to these three topics, we have a broad explanation of renunciation, bodhicitta, and correct view, and a condensed explanation of renunciation, bodhicitta, and correct view. So then when we get specifically into the topic, the individual topic of renunciation, there are three categories. First, the reason for renunciation, Second, the method for achieving renunciation. And then third, the measure of that renunciation. So these are the three categories presented under the category renunciation.
Ta nganju gubi nganju samba to gubi jusen karesna wa dende tengo resda na da nganju me ba sisi dende teni shi tame dende teni shi tame las dende teni shi tame na da nganju me ba sisi dende teni shi tame las jusen ne na da nganju me ba sisi dende teni shi tame la si la kamba yi jang le jian na gui ne qin shi toma ngan zhong zhe si wo tegi ngan zhong samba gui bi ju sen ten gan du si ta ngan zhong gui bi ju sen ne si ngan zhong gui bi ju sen ne ane na da ngan zhong me ba si si yi den de tuan yin shi ta me la si la kamba yi jang le jian na gui ne qin shi toma ngan zhong zhe si wo tegi ngan zhong samba ji gui bi ju sen ten gan du si ta.
Then toga, the lay.
Ta nganju samba sheba de jusen ta jebe se su mar ba. Jusen to jusen.
Then the toga, the j dang ju, the ewa gare.
Je do ju ga ba. Nganju sheba de nganju sheba de la su ma de ba. Nganju gu bi jusen, nganju jebe ta, nganju then
lansum the lam the sanjay shera gapaldu then natsu tanda natsu the j danju yure the ewa gare
that the go je do the shi kecha mo do de
then the tambo nanwa the lay
nganyu sama gu ju sen tro ju sen
okay
nada nganju me ba si chui den de den shi ta me la si la gamba yi jang le jian na gu ne qin shi toma nganju si toma nganju samba jang le che wu de gu de so de ro
so what I was asking about is what listen with clear minds, you lucky people who aspire to the path that pleases Buddhas, who work to give meaning to leisure and opportunity, who are not addicted to the pleasures of cyclic life. So I just asked what that fell into, and it's not presented. None of the 8 and the 10, those topics aren't presented. So we move into renunciation. Renunciation has 3 categories: the reason, the method, and the measurement of the renunciation. So we begin first with the reason for renunciation. It says, attachment for existence chains all corporeal beings. Addiction to the pleasures of this life cycle is only cured by transcendent renunciation. So seek transcendence first of all. So this is the reason for renunciation, that attachment for existence chains all corporeal beings. Addiction to the pleasures of life cycle is only cured by renunciation. So this is the reason we want to generate renunciation, because it's the only thing. It is only cured by it. So seek transcendence first of all. Seek the desire to definitely emerge first, Lama Tsongkhapa says. So this is the reason. Less so.
Tenyi de nganju samba jibi taure, nganju samba jibi gyures. Wa ta se do dat kasa tsendi naje do ba dam, chimi naje do ba ni je. Dat tsendi naje do ba de. Wa ze ta tsendi naje do ba de, chimi naje do ba ni ro. Tene.
Listen so bu.
다 동부 천디 나시 도바드가 내용 그랬으나 대주니가 쓸라 로메베 이라 공비 천디 나시도 신이들다 대주 된쳐와다 녀버가와다 마다베산들 담바이나 천들 잡아 두는 그래서 달라 되는 거 상바이 그래서 나요 상비 주시 그래서 대주니가 녀버가와 된쳐와 Tsala Loma Matabi Nesu in Marbe, Tanisan Tamayina, Sandal Chabi Chabadu Nugres.
The Dun Chewa Sumba?
Tanjunia Gaji, Nebakawa, Tanjunia Ga, Tanjur, the Watan Juba Nebakawa, Tsala Loma Bas, and then Matabi Nesu to Marbe. The Suila Yang Sambayina Yang Kubaina, Tanjunia Tsala Loma Ba. Then you don't know what the nearby Kawata, Matabenet to so, Sala Momeba, Matabenet to the Abasan Tabaina, Sindel Chaba Dures, Cindy and Hashi dos, Tegi, Naju somebody to Juji Shigres, Cindy and Hashi dos, what the I'll tell Teji Lajana.
So the next category deals with the method for achieving renunciation. So the method meaning the cause of renunciation. So this category, the cause of renunciation or the method for renunciation, we find two categories. First, the method for turning away from the things of this life, or interest in this life, and then second, the method for turning away interest in future lives. So those are the two categories that are presented there. So the cause of turning away, or the method for turning away interest in this life, is presented here. Leisure and opportunity are hard to get, and there is no time to life. Keep thinking on this, and you will turn off your interest in this life. So we recognize that we have achieved something that is very difficult to achieve. There are three categories that it's difficult to achieve. That it has great meaning, and let me get back to the third. It has great meaning. Rinpoche, the Nyepagawa, Dunchewa, Sumbagare.
Tanjunia Cosmarba, the Wajit and Juba Jusai, May that never goddess, never Kaipe, never Kai Jusen, never Kaipe, and know what the Denutang Andrushene, and then as soon as you can such a bit do Navares, Denutang Andrushene, Denul Chicken, the Shattins in between Navares, do Tamarba, then no iron the Pamichi, Manana, Manana, Taba, my insurance, then I saw you now pitching among others down the room. What was the letter would do? Then you near God, Sala Loma be, then you don't show the nearby Kawa. Sala Loma was a Madaba, Madaba.
Sala Loma there.
Sala Loma, Madaba. Sala Loma, what to do?
There.
What you son to the Tamba, you know, send the Chabatu race. Tell her, taking and you somebody, Juji.
So the three categories are the difficult to achieve. The second category is that it has great meaning, and the third category is that life is easily lost. So by reflecting on these points, one is able to turn off interest for this life. So this becomes one cause for realizing the desire to definitely emerge, or renunciation. So it says leisure and opportunity are hard to get. So the 8 leisures and the 10 opportunities are difficult to get. This human basis is difficult to get. Why is it difficult to get? It's difficult to get by example, and it's difficult to get because there are reasons or correct signs. So it's difficult to get because of example is that it states in the sutras that the beings that go from the higher realms and the lower realms to the lower realms are like the atoms on the earth, and the beings that go from the higher realms or the lower realms to the higher realms are like the atoms that fit on a fingernail. So this is a scriptural presentation and an example of how difficult it is to get this human basis. So it's similar to the atoms on a fingernail compared to all of the atoms in the world. And then it says, leisure and opportunity are hard to get, and there is no time to life. Keep thinking on this. So we have this leisure and opportunity I'm sorry, I just skipped something. So we have this by way of example. The next is the reason why leisure and opportunity are difficult to get. And we find in Arya Davis' 400 verses the quote that says, humans for the most part are involved in the ignoble, therefore most ordinary beings fall to the lower realms. So this is the reason, the correct sign that's given to show that leisure and opportunity are hard to get. And then leisure and opportunity have great meaning, but life is easily lost. We think about the nature of impermanence. It says, and there is no time to life. Keep thinking on this and you will turn off your interest in this life. So we recognize that our life is easily lost because we meditate on impermanence, understand the nature of impermanence, and then we have, again, created a cause for renunciation. So this is under the method section. And the method for turning away interest in this life, which is a cause for renunciation.
Sindi nashi duwa len, tenju nye ka tsala lume ba, ne yansa na shim kasa, tenju nye ka tsala lume yila gongpe sindi nashi duwa. Wate che, ta lende malo kuyu dunga na, yansa na shimi nashi duwa, chi nyi ma duwa. Lende malo kuyu dunga na yansa na shimi nashi, chi shima kuyu duwa chaba duwa res. 다 렌데 물로서 때마르베다 네 거와주 더 먹어주 산탄지 오마르베 거와주 제부들레 먹어주 제부들레 네 동해 용거래 내송 용거래스 그래서 네 먹어주 수준라테네 도와 용거래 물리적거래 살리적거래 타바 용거래 소지 용거래 호트서 오마르베 호트서 물로와서 오마르베 네 대바 먹어주 주사발 때네 네 레부 동에 다 내손 지어도 몰라와레스 내버도 용거레스 샤나지야라 때는 마투바이나 때네 먹이 좀 우추디 상투바이나 거와다 로타가 만조바이나 네 레부도 와다 던도다 타바다 사지 구분 요바 몰라와레스 내바 용거레스 what 산타 때는 쿠이동에 네 쿠이동에 때는 dunga je da dunga tro da dunga son to sole sane ya pata wa ina an se shema ku do koal chaba do no res koal chaba do no du koal magwa cha no marbe magwa no du nga no sama je o marbe wa de nga no sama ju je gre se wo sare lende mo lo ku dunga na ya sa na shemi na she dos lende mo lo so diba magwa ju na gwa ju de bu mo lo Mago Jugan Devatil Dunga Nesum Maloa is Loha Jugan Devatil Dewata Dendro Taba to some Maloa is and the Ku Dunga to the Jeda, Trotan the San Mamatabaina, and the Seshama Ku Kuala Chavish Havadun is that those on the thing I know so much is. The Charan, the Natsu Gewa Lutama Manyam, the Detsuna. The Natsu Gewa Luta, the Chukari Sumbre. Da Gawaju the Sana Goal, the Wayungoro.
Lesser.
Dendral Chigre, and then Taba Yungor, Swaji Yungor.
Lesser.
And the control law, Lota Jebaina, Goal, what they, the Wajani Nubata, Matan Halja, Nubat John what the John Goro, Maria. Never told you some Shadna Jebaina, Dibale, Dunga, and Suchinu, Nubat John. What the Katita Marbe.
So the next category deals with turning away interest in future lives, and this then becomes a cause for renunciation. So it says, contemplate the inexorability of evolutionary effects and the sufferings of life over and over again, and you will turn off interest in future lives. So we contemplate that when we talk about virtue and non-virtue, we can speak of the 10 non-virtuous activities and the ethics which abandon the 10 non-virtuous activities. So the evolutionary effects, what this is referring to is that of karma and its results. It's stating that certainly that virtuous deeds will give rise to happiness, and non-virtuous deeds will give rise to suffering. So again, those 10 virtues, which is an active abandoning of any among those 10 non-virtues, and then the 10 non-virtues are those 10 that are just presented. So when we think about what those deeds will bring to us, what those things, those actions will cause, we then begin to have a desire to emerge from future lives, and then we have this renunciation that is being formed, that is being caused. So the way that we contemplate the inexorability of evolutionary effects is by looking at the 8 types of suffering, looking at the 6 types of suffering, looking at the 3 types of suffering, and recognizing that if we engage in any among those 10 non-virtuous activities, we will have to suffer. We will suffer in the lower realms of cyclic existence. We will suffer through experiences that are suffering. And if we do not apply an opponent or an antidote to those non-virtues, such as the practice called the 4 opponent powers, then those non-virtuous deeds will necessarily give rise to a form of suffering. Our virtuous deeds will give rise to a form of happiness, whether it's the happiness of the higher realms, happiness of liberation, happiness of Buddhahood. If we have virtuous deeds and actions, or virtuous karma, and that those virtues haven't been counteracted or cleared away by our anger or our wrong views, then they will necessarily give rise to happiness. So our non-virtues can be purified by the 4 opponent powers. In the same way, our virtues can be cleared away or purified, the opposite of purified, taken away by wrong views and by anger. So when we contemplate this lessens our attachment to future lives by recognizing all of these different types of suffering and understanding them, and understanding that without a purification we will have to have them. And if we recognize that we will have them in the future, then it lessens our attachment to the future life. So that is what is meant here when it says, contemplate the inexorability of evolutionary effects and the sufferings of life over and over again, and you will turn off interest in future lives. So by meditating over and over again on karma and its results, and the different varieties of karma and their results, then by contemplating this over and over again, one will dismiss this interest in future lives, and one has previously dismissed the interest in the things of this life, and then this becomes a full rise, something which can cause the full arisal of the desire to definitely emerge, renunciation. So our attachment to cyclic existence then is pacified by losing interest in the future lives. Khensur Rinpoche.
Tsendi nashi duba tang, shimi nashi duba te tere kompes, tsendi nashi duba te shimi nashi ni duba nipa te yaya sanlu tang ne, gomba shiba ina tere kompe, yaya san tangba yesu na tala tene, kuyu pensu la yime keji tang ma jishins, kuyu pensu la kapu meba. Yime keji tang ma jishin, 가서 유명해지 담은 지신 인생 군도 타바되냐로 인생 군도 타바토 나냐베 되냐로 조선나 안는 거 선바지 세 세드로 되디 잡은도
So when we meditate again and again, when we familiarize ourselves again and again with the topics that make us lose interest in the things of this life, and then meditate again and again on the topics which make us lose interest in the things of future life, then our attachment to the wonders of cyclic existence lessens. So then we get into the next category, which is the measure of that renunciation. So we showed first the reason for it, and then the method for achieving it, the cause for achieving it, and that those two categories of losing the interest in this life and then in future lives. And then the third category is the measurement of that achievement. How do you know if you have achieved it? And it says, by constant meditation, your mind will not entertain a moment's wish even for the successes of life, and you will aim for freedom all day and night. So this is the measure of that renunciation. If it is present all day and night, if there's this desire to emerge from cyclic existence, and an aim, it says you aim for freedom all day and night. Freedom can be translated as liberation here. So you're aiming at liberation day and night. So you have this desire to emerge, to be liberated day and night. So this is the measurement of this. Khensur Rinpoche.
Jayusoro kuj hibi de ngaju samba marbe. Jayusoro kuj hibi de ngaju samba dela ngaju samba chi ku jusen ta chebi che son rendo. Jayusoro kuj hibi de ngaju samba che bala son. Ngaju samba ku jusen ta chebi che son cha son. What is that? Jayusoro kuj hibi de son go de ngaju samba de de. Jayusoro kuj hibi de ngaju samba che bala ngaju samba gubi jusen ngaju samba jibi tau ngaju samba jibi che de son tsaro da ta jese tamba na jin ha bi la sha chu sen ma de sha chu sen
the bechagare
the la zong go dro
the nuchi charo baja
hebi mar je la zul de la che je so ro bi hebi de jese tamba na jin ha bi la Kede not tell not you want Cheta Nuji Dag she was somewhat on Jet Mother, somewhat Taja. There's no going heavy.
Okay. Lesser. Gong and Mevichi, Chern Jubu Dro do. Okay, so when we look at the measurement of this renunciation, we say that if you, by constant meditation, by familiarizing yourself again and again with the disinterest of the things of this life and the disinterest in the things of future lives, then your mind will not entertain a moment's wish even for the successes of life, so even for the good things in life, so even for the wonders of cyclic existence, one will not have any attachment for it, and you will aim for freedom all day and night. You will wish to have liberation all day and night. When that state of mind is present all the time, then you experience transcendent renunciation. So this shows you that you have experienced renunciation. This is the qualification of renunciation. And renunciation is found first in the introductory paragraph where we find the expression of worship and then the promise to compose. And it states the essential import of all the victor's teachings. The essential import of all the victor's teachings refers to renunciation. And then renunciation is divided into these three categories: the reason, the method, and the measurement of it. So that is the section on renunciation in Luchidhamma Bhadra's text. Khensur.
Ta ngaju samba sheba de son ro ngaju samba gubi ju chen ngaju samba jibi ta ngaju samba jibi che cha je ta de ne ane shangju ji sen sheba le ni re shangju ji sen sheba ane jese tamba na jin ha bi lang ho de jese tamba na jin ha bi lang sa de shangju sen le sa de duwa jese tamba na jin ha bi lang shangju sen sheba le sa je ni re shangju sen gubi ju sen shangju sen jibi ta我的你写个读，想出这三几个决赛当，想出三几个套你这，但想出这三几个决赛干的是呢？我决赛等个读是，但想出三几个决赛的，俺就等下拿到三几节，三百门那边想出去，分数对就那么就。路内那去上主三主节，我这个上主三几个就三单个都是，上主三，不得去的个就三单个都是的。 ngaju samba yoba ina ngaju samba de shachu seng mazina sanju gu mutu jun ru mare ngaju de nada senje je shachu seng mazina nada senje seba mena lamen shachu pensu du jurmun ju lo de na shachu senju jes wa de shachu seng gu ju sen de dos o de shen ku ji ngen su na ne o de ju san de yabu do ta.
So now we get into the mind that aspires to enlightenment, a desire to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And in this, we find that there are two categories presented by Ngutru Dhamma First, the category of the reason for developing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, and the second category, which is the method for achieving the mind that aspires to enlightenment, or realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So the first category, the reason for generating the mind that aspires to enlightenment, is found in this stanza. Since this wish for freedom, if unaccompanied by the altruistic intention, will not act as a cause for the perfect happiness of unsurpassable enlightenment, the wise arouse the supreme intention to become enlightened. So even if one has a renunciation, so since this wish for freedom, so that's saying if you have renunciation, but it's not accompanied by the mind that aspires to enlightenment or bodhicitta, then it cannot become a cause for complete Buddhahood. So it's stating that bodhicitta, the mind that aspires to enlightenment, is necessary in order to become a Buddha. So therefore, the wise arouse the supreme intention to become enlightened. And so this is the category of the reason for generating bodhicitta. The reason is that you can't become a Buddha without it. Diksan.
What did that Shanju Sen Jusen de Tango Nanu Daya, Nanu Samba Yoba Yinaya, Shanju Sen Mazina, Shanju Sen Mena, and then what the Nanu Samba Gawashira Chibere, Sanji Gumutu Junuk Mares. Nanu Daya, Nada Senji, Simba Mena, Lame Shanju, Pensu du Jurmaju, Ludena Shiro the Dembanaji, and the Shanju Senji Ures, Jusen Dangusa.
So the reason that we have want to have the mind that aspires to enlightenment arise is because since this wish for freedom, so since even if we have renunciation, we have a desire to definitely emerge, and renunciation is an incredible amount of virtue. Even if we have this, but we don't have the altruistic intention, we don't have the mind that aspires to enlightenment, we can't become a Buddha. It says, will not act as a cause for the perfect happiness of unsurpassable enlightenment. And then the wise arouse bodhicitta to become enlightened. The supreme intention here is referring to bodhicitta. So those wise ones who know this generate the mind that aspires to enlightenment because it's a cause for enlightenment. So this is the first category, which is the reason for generating bodhicitta.
Shanju Senji Todd Gandaris and Andres. Shuda Chuji Juji Cher, Duga Leji Chima Tambidan, Danzi Jajita Buzu, Marie Baby Marching Quinity, Meme Siba Jishin Jiwaro, Dugan Junji Meva Na, Naga Nada Jubi Mana J. Nasu San Ne, Sensu Jibazus, what the Tijin Sensi Jib Tot Tangadusa. Tashuda Chuji Juchisate, Chi Dunga, Gai Dunga, Nai Dunga, Chi Dunga Jitele, Chuji Mingitaba Marbe, Shuda Chuji Juji Chir, Duga Leji Chiwan Tabi Dance Dule, and the Tadanga to Ku Homodan to Dedu Goyate, and what the lead on Yomo down the waters. Duga Leji Chiwan Tambi down, Mazukara Ramadu things at it. Danzi Jajita Busu, Danzi, on the dancing Jagajawa, Jog Boots to the Ores. Marie may be matching Quinity, Tokodanila Mom Mariba down, Lendela Mom Mariba, what they want gay. Magic Queen, Marie may be matching Quinity. Telatene. Meme Sipa Jishin Jawaros, Tato Memeba, Mayam Malaje, Halaje, Quality, Nyawalaje, Dalaje, or the Junji Meba, or the Nukudiores, Meme Sipa Jishin Jawaro, Dungan Sonjes, Dungan Dungan, Chaban Digi, Dungan Sonje, the Juma Shiba, not the sentient to 산다네 안에 내가 너를 좀 만나지 나수도 산네 sentient tantric dondo sanji gu tuba shao nyabe senji gures senji ban de she yada zu xiang zu des an nga so de ai ce ge mo in da bu de da ma sa senji yo ma de wo de su de de do ah
listen
wo de senji gu ju sen de de do sa
okay so
senji gu to ma de
so we have the mind that aspires to enlightenment. The two categories. First is the reason for generating the mind that aspires to enlightenment. We've gone through that. I'll read it again. Since this wish for freedom, if unaccompanied by the altruistic intention, will not act as a cause for the perfect happiness of unsurpassable enlightenment, the wise arouse the supreme intention to become enlightened. And then we get into the method for achieving the mind that aspires to enlightenment. Swept away by the strong currents of four great rivers, bound by the tight bonds of actions which are hard to escape, ensnared in the meshes of conceptions of a self, beings are shrouded in thick darkness of ignorance, endlessly born in worldly existence, and in those births incessantly tormented by the three kinds of suffering. Reflecting on the condition of your mothers in such a predicament, arouse the supreme intention. So we find swept away by the strong currents of the four great rivers. This is referring to the four types of suffering. The suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death is merely nominally designated, named as the four great rivers here, but this is referring specifically to those types of suffering. Bound by the tight bonds of actions which are hard to escape, our non-virtuous actions will cause an arisal of suffering in the future. It says, ensnared in the iron meshes of conceptions of a self. So this is grasping at the self as being truly established. And then it says, beings are shrouded in the thick darkness of ignorance. There are two kinds of ignorance. Ignorance of karma and its results, and ignorance about the nature of reality. So it's like a darkness when one has that. And endlessly born in worldly existence in those births. Endlessly born, being born again and again into the hell realm, into the hungry ghost realm, into the animal realm, into the human realm, into the God's realm. So endlessly, beginninglessly being born in these different types of conditions and experiences, in those births incessantly tormented by the three kinds of suffering, the suffering of change, and the pervasive compounded suffering. Reflection on the condition of your mothers in such a predicament arouse the supreme intention. This is referring to the method for generating the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So we have the reason for generating it, you can't become a Buddha, and then the method for generating it, the thinking about the conditions and the sufferings and so forth that all sentient beings who have been our mothers have to endure. That's all the commentary Rinpoche gave. And Rinpoche has said a couple of times what a wonderful summary of this text this is.
다 쇼다 추지 지 준지 도가 레지 청와 담베다 다니자지자의 말이 매배 마신 꾸는티 매매서바 지시 조로 동에서 주지 매반나이 시젠도서 내수 살다네 아니 시젠 다지 동에 매바서 고르스 말이야 시젠 다지 동에데 매바서 고르스 시젠 다지 동에 매바서 발라 단다 소설레 네바요 말레스 네바요 네바드 솔로는 사제를 요하르스 네시제 단지 동도 사제 고본도비 네 살당 오레스 사제 고본도바이나 안노바드 시제 단지 도알 타버들 거도그래 타벌 거도그래 노바데 사제 살 거도그레스 대조상 시제 단지 동도 산주 제반주스 다 산주 제반 산제비 주데 네 준네 명아 뒤주고는 생집이 주당 다전야바 지역은 생집이 주고 어디서도 못 생주 제반 줘서 되노래 준네 명아 뒤주고는 생집이 주당 다전야바 지역은 생집이 주라 때네 안에 생년 다지고 천주고 투고 샤오냐베 생주 제반 주스 어디서 배 동래물도 가는 저도
when we look at the situation that all sentient beings who have been our mothers are in, we see that they are endlessly born into cyclic existence and then tormented by the three types of suffering. Again, suffering of change, and pervasive compounded suffering. So we recognize that they're in this condition, and we wish that we could help them. We want them to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, but at this present time we really can't free them from it. And then we look to a being who is able to help them really, who is able to really liberate them, and we find that it is the Buddha. The Buddha is able to lead sentient beings to those different results of happiness, the happiness of the higher realms, happiness of liberation, and the happiness of complete Buddhahood. So the Buddha is the one who can truly do that. We, at this point, cannot, even if we want to do so. So then that motivates us to want to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And this is the mind that aspires to enlightenment. I want to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And there are two practices that allow us to, two practices that allow us to generate the mind that aspires to enlightenment. The first practice is a 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, and the second category is the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice. So these will allow us to generate the mind that aspires to enlightenment, and we wish to become a Buddha because we recognize the immense sufferings that all of our mothers are enduring, and that we can't really do anything about it. We want sentient beings to have happiness in its causes and be free from suffering in its causes, but we really don't know how to lead them to happiness or away from suffering. So therefore we want to become a Buddha because the Buddha is in the best condition and is the most capable to do so.
What the WCG doing now to the sound there, and the century Jebus. Adisha is on Latin, June Manga do when the century to down. Papa Shola is on Latin, Dajan Yabaji when the century Jebus. What to look at
if we were, it says, reflecting on the conditions of your mothers in such a predicament, arouse the supreme intention. So I'm just going to read the whole thing. Endlessly born in worldly existence, and in those births incessantly tormented by 3 kinds of suffering, reflecting on the condition of your mothers in such a predicament, arouse the supreme intention. The supreme intention is bodhicitta, the mind that aspires to enlightenment. How do we arouse that supreme intention? How do we realize bodhicitta? We do so by the instructions that were given by Lord Atisha, which are the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, and the instructions that were given by Shantideva, which are the teachings on equalizing and exchanging self with others' practices. It's Rinpoche once again said how wonderful it is to look at this text in this way and see it summarized.
다 내주 차지 다 상주 생산을 말해.
Lesso.
다 다와래 다와. 다와시버들 사진가도 가.
Lesso.
다와데 야다비 다와시버라 사진가래. 야다비 다와 지구비 주생. 돈이 또 싫어 지구비 주생. 야다비 다와 지구비 주생.
Lesso. 니파?
나는 니바 야다비 다와 거좀 와스래. 돈이 또 싫어 거좀 와. 돈이 또 다와 거좀 와스. 니바지
Muzoa.
Somba Yantabi Tawa Yantabi Tayu Kosashi Basa Yantabi Tayu Kosashi Basa and the Tawa no truth to Mozingwata Tata Cheta Mundia Yantabi Tayu Kosashi Basa Tauluba Tauluba so Rumi Marba
the Garshini Go
Kosashi Basa
Gosa.
What the Tauluba
The Nipas, the NGK Garre.
Nipa Yantabi Tawa Mozuma
It's a Mozuma.
Mozuma is a Mango Kadu Mozuma. What the Yantabi don't need to be shared second then
Oh, okay. In actuality. Decent, okay.
Then Yantabi Tayu Kosas and Lubata, Kaji said the car there.
Lesso.
Then Yantabi Tawa Chibitse, don't need to be shared Chibitse.
Lesso.
To be shared Chibitse.
Lesso.
Then Yantabi Tayu Chechu, the Chechu. Yantabi Tayu Chechu. Yantabi Tawa and then Jebin the Yungre, and then the Yungre what the Chechu was. Chechu.
Okay. Shupa comes. Okay. So the next category that we get to is the correct view. And then the correct view has 5 categories. So correct view has the first category of the reason for the correct view. The second category is the actual correct view, or the correct in actuality. And number 3 is the need for the correct view in order to negate those views that are mistaken, or those views that have error. The fourth category is the measure of the correct view, and then the fifth category is what comes from this correct view, what happens if you have it. So these are the 5 categories under correct view that we get into next in stanza number 9. Oh, everyone doesn't have this, so it's in the 9th stanza.
Nelu to be shira medena or tenant would serta. Nelu to be shira medena, Nanju Shanju Sala Conche Jan. Sibi saw Juba Menubi, they should tended to be Talam base or Sige, and then Tony to be shira Gubi, Jusen Tengu serta. Nelu to be shira medena, Nanju Shanju Sala Conche Jan. Sibi saw Juba Menubi, they should tended to be Talam base or the Tony to be share of Jusen Tendosa, Jusen. Tony to be share of Mabaina, and then I knew somebody the Shanju Sankazi, and Denzil no tomorrow. Denzil no tomorrow. Taba dream I by Shibu Mana, Taba Denzil no tomorrow. Chuna de Bama Ruba Shibu Mana, and the Shanju sent and I knew somebody by Inaya, and then Denzil no tomorrow. Denzil no tomorrow. What the net. Kaza Nelu to be share of Madena, Nanju Shanju Sala Conchejan, Nanju Shanju San Jul Cheba Inaya, and the Sibiza Juba Minibis, Sibiza Denzi to Kuiza Maribel, Kuiza no to Mares, Shansu Motan Game, Shindu never such a means, Shambat and Hijitan, Nanju Samba to Gawati, Pushidare, Denzi Mariba, the Mebajilla Mene, Zidango de Mares. Then it's such a 2 months. Taba dream I ever shibble, Taba dream touch your door. Taba and then Mamma ever shibble, the Taba dream touch your tumor. What then is no word that?
Long carne.
They and then they do they. Nelu to be share of Madena, the Lanzo. Nelu to be share of Madena, Nanju Shanju Sala Conche Jans. Nelu to be share of, don't need to be share of the Mena. Nanju Shanju San Yoba Inaya, and the Sibi Zawa Denzil no 2 months. Juba Minibe, teacher, tended to be told, don't need to be Sheraja, Tauchi, Tolamegures.
So number 9, stanza number 9 deals with the reason for generating the correct view. So what is the correct view? The correct view is the wisdom realizing emptiness, the correct view of the nature of reality. So it says, though familiar with the wish to leave cyclic existence and with the altruistic intention, you cannot cut the root of worldly existence without wisdom understanding reality, so make effort in the means to comprehend dependent arising. So dependent arising here is showing emptiness. So dependent arising is showing emptiness, and the reason that one needs to generate the wisdom realizing emptiness is because even if one has generated renunciation, and even if one has generated bodhicitta, if there isn't that which gets rid of the root of cyclic existence present, then there will still be cyclic existence. So what is the root of cyclic existence? The root of cyclic existence is the grasping at true establishment. So the only thing that can harm the mistaken view, which is the grasping at true establishment, is the correct view that recognizes that things are not truly established. In the same way that the only thing that can counteract the wrong view that one could have occur if he or she walked into a dark room and thought that a rope was a snake would be the correct view that it's actually a rope. And likewise, the only thing that can counteract the mistaken view that believes that things are truly established is this wisdom realizing emptiness. It states in a text that even though bodhicitta and renunciation are wonderful virtues, they don't strike at the heart of what causes us to suffer. They don't get to the core, the root of what causes us to suffer. So what does the wisdom realizing emptiness? So this is how we get rid of that root of cyclic existence, and this is how we harm the grasping at true establishment.
kanji kunde chuna kuyu chusa na wate sansara chu tu marbe debi chusa ke tabi chu taba to sanji gu tu marbe kunde kuasana sansara marbe kuale deba sana an taba to sanji tu yirwa kunde chuna taji ji junde na loa me to shis ne kuyu junde inanda ne kuala debi junde tabi junde sanji kutubi junde tutul loa yo mares junde na loa meton shins junde na loa meton shins roa ne jogwala tene debu dawa yungre judunga judibala tene debu dunga yungre smarbe ne wode jogwala tene debu dawa yungba loa me ba marbe judibala tene debu dunga yungwa loa me ba marbe lede moloa tene wotene tabi lang gomba ina ane debu taba yungwa molobaro sanji gomtu lang gomba ina tene sanji yungwa le tzu me ba moloro wot tzu ngalo rana ge jujen la tune chuba marbe tune chuba rana ge jujen la gi dewai de junde ina da debi junde kare ina 타제 라나게 주진을 뛰는 주도 말이야. 주진을 마트바 라마도 주도 말이야. 주진 네 주진 maybe there's a kind of kunshi then sanji jibe lan what to konde ge chu galo 라나게 준들라 때는 주거래. 다질라 뛰는 주거래. 텐데 이미지 텐데 인상 안춘 대범을 주거래. kuyu chuina야 대 텐데레 코알인데 비추이나 텐데레 텐데 인상 네 투비 따발라마도 장원 주바디요 마레스 장원 주바디요 마레 장원 주바지메 제비 셰유트 시소나 가소나 네 어디 돈이도 셰로도 모레스
Bless
다가도 텐데 이미지 생이 되면 두고 텐데 아
Bless
텐데 간지 콘데 주나 다지지 kuyu kualinde bi chu kari inenda chama ane rana jujen la tuen chudu ares jujen la junde na loa me to shins maybe deso kanji kuyi ba tene sanji je bi rana ge jujen la tuen chuba daje la tuen chuba insa matu ba rana dio mares rana me ba tse sona toni du sheras teres
Listen.
Listen.
Whoever sees that the causes and effects of all phenomena in cyclic existence and beyond are unfailing and thoroughly destroys the mainstay of conceptions walks on the path that pleases the Buddhas. So when we look at causes and effects, we can look at them in terms of virtue causes happiness, non-virtue causes suffering, and we see in cyclic existence and beyond are unfailing. So this is speaking of dependent origination. It's speaking of that causes and effects that come together that are then establish a phenomena, act in this way in cyclic existence and beyond. So dependent origination is the nature of the way things come into being in cyclic existence and beyond. And thoroughly destroys the mainstays of, it says, whoever sees that causes and effects of all phenomena in cyclic existence and beyond are unfailing, and thoroughly destroys the mainstay of misconceptions, walks on the path that pleases the Buddha. So the mainstay of misconceptions is the grasping at true establishment, as being singular and partness, seeing phenomena as singular and partless. But here this is stating that whoever sees that causes and effects, these causes and effects actually establish the phenomena. There's an interdependence that's taking place there that then allows this arisal of this phenomena. And this is the way, this nature of reality, which is the lack of true establishment of phenomena, is this way in cyclic existence and beyond cyclic existence. So the nature of reality isn't different in cyclic existence and in beyond, which would be liberation. Nature of reality is exactly the same. So that's what it's meaning here. What is the nature of reality? Dependent origination. And here we have this dependent origination that's established by causes and conditions.
Suma yang tabi tayu kusa te tenga dusa. Tonga tende loa meba tanga, tomba kelenti yu kuwa ni, chesi susu na tesi to, tatung tobi gungba tuba mes, wa tege yang tayu kusa tenga dusa. Tonga tende loa meba tanga, tomba kelenti yu kuwa ni, chesi susu na tesi to, tatung tobi gungba tuba mes, wa tege tayu kusa tenga dusa. Tonga tende sena, 나 가서 나대가 조다 자다 저다 로다 레야 두서 통화 말베 통화 된데 말베 통화 된데 로아 매바다 동바 클랜티 안 조다 들어라서 봐 가서 나대가 취도서 그걸로 대바 마루바 대다 타녀도 취도서 그걸로 네 타녀도 취도 여바지 안 대바 마루바 산당어도 매바고 안에 추노 댄데 추도서 여바 고용도 대바 주고 거네. 어디 고소나 어디 따유 고사래서. 오늘 또야 내고. 어디 대바 마루 산다나 어디 추도서 매서도 매바고네. 제달로는 말봐. 라서. 아니 추도서 여바 산다도 대바 여바고. 라서. 대바 여바고 대바 마루 산다도 매바고는 어디 로다 제달로 되래서. 어디 따유 고사래서. 그래서 산다고래서. 세상은 도스다.
Then this sache kabir jutsen.
Jutsen 들어 사제 들에 손바 따유 고사서 따유 고사. 손바 따유 고사 시바테 봐. 도마야 따바타 구비 jutsen. 가옹어송. 야따 따유 고사.
Like gosa.
고사서 어때 너트여서 들면서.
So just to look at this actual commentary and the outline of it, the reason for correct view is stanza number 9. Though familiar with the wish to leave cyclic existence and with the altruistic intention, you cannot cut the root of worldly existence without wisdom understanding reality, so make effort in the means to comprehend dependent arising. And then this is the actual nature of reality. Whoever sees that causes and effects of all phenomena in cyclic existence and beyond are unfailing, and thoroughly destroys the mainstay of misconceptions, walks on the path which pleases the Buddhas. So here it's stating that there is no inherently existent phenomena in cyclic existence or beyond cyclic existence. In the state of liberation, all things dependently originate. So this is the actual nature of reality. And now we get into number 3, which is the need for the correct view, and in order to get rid of mistaken views. So it says, so long as the understanding of appearances as unfailing dependent arising and of emptiness, free from all assertions, seem disparate, you still do not comprehend the subduer's thought. So here, this is saying that the appearances, the things we see and apprehend, the forms, the tactile sensations, the tastes, the smells, the sounds, all of these things that we apprehend dependently originate. So we recognize this dependent origination, but the understanding of the lack of true establishment, the understanding of emptiness, needs to be free from two extremes. It needs to be free from the extreme of nihilism that one could arrive at by saying, oh, things are not truly established, so therefore they don't exist. And then also one needs to be careful not to fall into substantialism by saying, oh, well, things are not non-existent, so they must truly be there. They must be truly established. So one needs to understand dependent origination and understand that emptiness is dependent origination, because there are no inherently existent things, and that lack of inherent existence does not mean that they don't exist, nor does it mean that they substantially exist in any way. So number 12 is the need for the correct view in order to abandon the incorrect view. And again, the incorrect nihilism and substantialism would be the incorrect view.
Jeba yang tabi taji bise. Yang tabi taji bise de garzande deng du sata. Naji reju me ba jichar do. Tendre mulu tongwa zang ji ne nganshi yu jin zi dang gun ji na de se ta yu jeba zu ba la so de ge toni du bi shara ju le je bise deng du sata.
Don't negare.
Naji reju me ba jichar do. Naji reju me ba jichar do. Tendre mulu 나지 renju me bas tu ma ta nga su zu na chan ta ba ina no zu de ba ma ru ba de wa de ni ga lo naji renju me ba che sha dos zu san da de ba ru san da zu de ba ma ru san da de me ba ko su na an to ni du she ro yo ma ro da zu de na den de tong wa za ji den de mi ju sen je an de ba ma ru ba de ko su na wa de 돈이 되 셔라 줄을 집 세트레스 나지 renju me ba jeja na renju sana zu yo ba ko yong du de ba du ba ko zu de ba ma ru ko de me ba ko na renju re dro renju me ba sana zu den de yim ju sen je de ba ma ru ko sona wo te 돈이 되 셔라 집 세트레스 zu den de yim ju sen je de ba ma ru ba she sona zu de ba ma ru ba yin zu yus ja tu sona So the
next is the measurement of the correct view. So it says, when the two do not alternate but are simultaneous, and merely seeing dependent arising as unfailing destroys through certainty how the object is perceived. Analysis with regard to the view is complete. So when one recognizes the existence of a form, so one apprehends a form, has the experience of seeing a form. If one can recognize the existence of that form while still understanding that form's lack of true establishment without falling into any of the errors, then one's view is complete. But if one recognizes a form and then thinks of its lack of true establishment and then believes that form doesn't exist in some way, or believes that that form substantially exists in some way, then the view is incomplete. One's view is complete when one recognizes that that form, that thing, is not truly established because it dependently originates. So when one can see its dependent origination and its simultaneous existence, then one's view is complete. And when one doesn't harm the other's potential, is what if one harms the other's potential, then we could say that the lack of true establishment harms the potential for that to exist, and then that's an error. Or if we in some way feel that that thing exists, therefore it has to be truly established or substantially existent. So when we have any of those errors, the view is incomplete. But when the understanding that object exists and abides in a lack of true establishment because of dependent origination, and one can simultaneously understand that, then the view is realized. Digsum. This is the measure of whether it's realized. Less so. Less so.
Jen Tayu ta sewa tang, Tombe meta se Tomba ni Judan Trebicha Tuishe na, Tanzin Tayu Chuba Munjuros, Watake Tayu Chechu Tangdus, Tony to Shero Chechu Tangdus ta, Chuji Tangdus ta, Jen Tayu ta sewa tang. Hawa Tendi in Jusenji, and Ueta Debajuba sewa, Tendi image Jusenji Debamaruba, Tendi image Jusenji Debajuba sewa. Tendi image Jusenji Debajuba Kaba, Tendi image Jusenji Debamaruba. What the Shezona, Hayueta Sevas. Don't be meta, say Tombanis, don't be meta. Chuna Debamaruba Shebe, Chuna Debamaruba Shebe, and Zulu Suba Yuba. Yuba Shezona, or the Tombe meta said this, Meba meta. And then what the Zu Demo Abaji Tuba Ina, Zu Demet to Lola Tene. And the children tiny to you about it. Quach high with us. Then the image you send Demo Maruba Quach and Demo Maruba she will look again, tiny to Yoba, then they look Quachava. What the pension Jimhechi to Chazuna with the Dayu Chijus Teresa. Yeah, and how you at Sevata. How attend the image you send you with Demo Druba Sewa. Demo Maruba. Don't be meta says, don't you to be Shero Latene and Tanya to Mabat Kane, Tanya to Yoba, Kutuba. Or can you Debamaruba Shibutan, Tendi Mission Juluni de Jipenchiru, Gigi Latene, Jigi Jil Roche, Jigi Jil Roche by Jonsona, what the Taichu is that.
So now what comes from this view? So number 13 says, further, when you know how appearances preclude the extreme of existence and emptiness precludes the extreme of annihilation, and how emptiness appears as cause and effect, you will never be enthralled by wrong views. So this is what comes from having this correct view. You will never be enthralled by wrong views. So when you know how appearances preclude the extreme of existence. So it's when we can see the appearance of a form and we can establish that form's existence, and then we can also establish that form's lack of true establishment by seeing the its dependent arisal, by seeing dependent origination, then we are able to see its existence and its emptiness without going to an extreme of a true existence, of substantial existence, or a non-existent state. So we see and how emptiness appears as cause and effect. Emptiness appears as dependent origination. There's this dependent origination, therefore there's emptiness. It's empty of having true establishment. It's empty of having this singular inherently existent true establishment, because we've established that it is interdependent and that it dependently originates. So it says here, and how emptiness appears as cause and effect, you will never be enthralled by wrong views. By seeing dependent origination, you will not have an affinity for any among those two extremes. Now we get to that third category, which is the summary. So we've gotten through all of the categories, and now we're at that final one, which is the summary of all parts. And it says, when you have correctly understood the essentials of these three principal paths, child, seek seclusion and strengthen your effort to swiftly accomplish your future well-being. So this is the summary of what has been presented. Tsaku ngon drapa de gompa zuken. Okay, so do. That's That's so. So then, this was taught to Tsako Wompo Ngawan Drapa by the learned and fully ordained monk, the glorious Losang Drapa. So what this means is that Lama Tsongkhapa taught this text to Tsako Wompo Ngawan Drapa. Tsako Ngawan Drapa wanted to have teachings from Lama Tsongkhapa, and he was someone who created monasteries and temples. But Lama Tsongkhapa responded with this work, which is a very small work, a very summarized work, which is a very small summarized work. That's it. Translation. So, if we can slowly think about this and the commentary that's been presented, there's so much importance here in what we've seen in this. So, in English, we don't have this commentary, but this is a much better commentary than Pabunka Rinpoche's commentary that we do have in English. We do have that one in English. We could make this into English pretty easily. I mean, I just did. The Kanchan Yeshi Jetson, Jebo, de Jebo. Okay. So we have Kanchan Yeshi Jetson, who has a commentary on the three principal paths, which is a very large commentary, very long commentary. It's in the in these files at the Tibetan Resource Center. And Panchen Lama also has Panchen Su, Panchen goes on. Panchen Lama also has a commentary on the three principal paths. It's in the debate. It's a debate, almost like a Madhyamaka debate in this text. But it is very good, and if you can look at this text and look at the summary in this way, it would be great. So we have some soap offerings. So Rinpoche said he wants everybody to have some of that. The Rinpoche, the Stasha Triwa, right?
Okay, yeah.
Rinpoche, this sonchana sheda sobodu. NGK, the sobo zuso. Kashi, see Kashe, the Gari Yakshu and Shime, Yene, Moa, the Gatsu, the NGK zu tukudu, the Uchu Dhamma Bhadra. NG zu tuna, the Yabudu. The Ngama, the Lotsawa, the Pui Ken, then a Konsu, the Sanjake, then Pali, the Pui Xuson, then Natsu, the Kon, the Shera Yabudu Sanodanu.
Oh, yeah.
The Kon K Chempo Sanodanu. Arila, the Chi Dan Drapudu. The Demba in. Stasha, question?
Okay.
Thank you, Rinpoche, for the wonderful teaching today. Thank you so much. When someone realizes emptiness and they see, I'm going by like stanza 13, when it says you will never be captivated by the views of grasping at extremes once you realize the cause and effect. after someone sees emptiness and they see dependent arising, do they still have the capacity to create non-virtue just because we're under the under karma and afflictions from beginningless lives, or do you have the ability to stop doing non-virtue immediately because you know that non-virtue creates suffering? So
go ahead.
I think in summary, once someone realizes emptiness, do they still create non-virtue, or do they have the ability to stop immeditely?
And that's while they're in the experience of realizing emptiness, or post experience.
After,
okay,
yes,
thank you.
after.
The doni dobi shira ken the papa the kon the ton lam the toni gondu nene kon landu the lana kon megewa satudu yanje the ton lampa the doni dobi shira the tomani tonson then konso landu then the nusum yomare the doni nusum dobi shira yomare the anje the drabo daludu konso megewa satudu ton lampa toni tona megewa yanje satudu megewa
Magawa Chijun Savda Ayon Shida Yajmara Papadil Tunimos to Sarong and Rundan Suzuki, Fish
Lasso.
Magawa Ayon Mure.
Rinpoche said that once someone has realized emptiness, has had the wisdom realizing emptiness, they're an Arya, they're a superior being, which means that they necessarily have realized all of these other things already. They've realized renunciation, they've realized all of these other very large topics. So they've had realizations of them. Therefore, do they have, I'm just translating just like he said it, do they have virtue? Can they still engage in non-virtue? I don't think so. I wouldn't think so. Because they've already had the direct perception of emptiness. They've had the direct valid cognition of emptiness. They've had this. So they can't engage in this non-virtue anymore. At that point, the coarse afflictions are destroyed, and you can no longer go to the lower realms of cyclic existence again.
Can I ask you if it's sort of... It spins off that response that once you realize emptiness, is it possible that one gets a glimpse of it and then falls back into old habits, and gets a glimpse and falls back into old habits? So once you've recognized it, it's...
The definition within, I'll let Rinpoche answer, but the definition within direct perception is that it's incontrovertible.
Okay.
The Doni Dopi Shera Yuna, Bene Yanjer Dao Lopa Yondue, Yontudue. The Dadzi. It'd be difficult for it to come back.
Doni Dopi Shera Zgadwa, Chisadule,
So realizing emptiness isn't something that's very easy, that just happens at all. And once one has realized this emptiness, for it to change, it would be quite difficult. So this is a very high realization that's hard to achieve, and it's incontrovertible once you have it. Malue Ripa. The Malua. I was just telling Rinpoche with it, I was saying that it says that it's incontrovertible understanding that takes place. It's within the definition of direct perception.
Yeah.
The Katie Trua, you're right.
Okay.
Since everybody's perception is different, and their perception of reality is different, And the causes and conditions that arise to the realization of emptiness, is their perception of emptiness different? Is each individual's perception of emptiness different?
The ngatsu susu re the nangwa the kakare. Ngatsu de tondu and kon de tondu dets kakare the konkelen.
When they realize that emptiness is their perception of emptiness.
The susur the re doni do bishira yuna. The doni do bishira chipa kakare. That's it. It's the same. Same experience, the same wisdom realizing emptiness.
Okay. 가주지음체.
돈이 또 비셔다 오마 타주 돈이 또 비셔라 나주 돈이 또 비셔라 산삼부 돈이 또 비셔라 어떤 데 차라 모여로다 오마 타주 돈이 또 바이나 강아지 버로다.
So we find different views that are presented in the wisdom realizing emptiness according to the middle way consequence school, the wisdom realizing emptiness according to the middle way autonomy school, the wisdom realizing emptiness according to the mind only school, but the wisdom realizing emptiness according to the consequence school is all the same. Consequence school, the highest school of emptiness, they assert that that wisdom realizing emptiness is a universal, all the same. So maybe that's fine. It's difficult. It's been difficult. Tu Chenrezig Rinpoche, Sheda Sobodum, the Chenmo Padrin Chenmo. The Chu Lansan Long, non tuide.
That is a lot of long on the
As Rinpoche, if you give us the transmission of the three principles.
제유소로 그 헤비든 제세 나버 타반나 하벨 하게는 타도는 요혼 제단유지 다가시 바셔 가다시비들라 마샤시 대주 대여셔서 바이 자와지빌론라 히트비 그데 다다 이지뉴 그데 다다 이는 아다가 좀 시시 데데 데시 타말라 실라 컴바이 전로젠 코네지 도망에 중세 대주냐 가슬라 몸에 일라 공베 천나지도 들렌드 말로쿠 등한 야상나 시메나시도 데드라 공베 그변도라 예면까지 깨지 다음에 예제 그도 다바드냐로 쇼나트 생각을 지발하는 데 하나 사실 세발만 나라면서 주지 변수디 주르문주 문주로로데 나제 장주 생주지 수라주지 준지 제도가 레지 생활 담배 다지자지 타야 부수주 말이 매매마제 그나 매매서 받지 지와로 동안 순지 주지 매받나 내가 집에 많아 제가 수선을 생기 좀 주는 루트비 싫어 마든 마유장주장라 공제장 세비서 주범문에 대제대를 또 라베 관시 군에 주나 탄지 준지나 로아면 도지 매비 대수 관시 군시 매비 대수 관이 군시 봐 되는 산지 집에 나라시 나한테를 로아면 받아 도박클렌지 고와 제시수 나한테도 다도 도비고 또 나지대 주마바 제자도 내시 텐데 몰로 동아산이 내시 유진 다고제나 뜻자이 제바즈발 제 나요 다서도 동반 동배면서 동반 교단으로 제 수진은 단지 다요 주보면 요르다 나지 조나서 제나나 지나랑 투베스 엠바든 준주도 텐제 노마니 두두시보 제조나만 라샤도라 제 수로고 해비는 제세 담나 그래나 단도나 용어도 제대로 다게 시버샤 뭐야 도지시 야
So that was the transmission of the three principal paths.
Oh yeah.
So we'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. And just as a note, the reason for transmissions, as it's said, that it makes it easier for the student to learn it once there's this blessing that's taken place. And that transmission is powerful because it traces back all the way to the origin of it.
Oh yeah.
The fundamental ground is scented with the incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Lobsang drop by the Shine forever, I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, the spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts, with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuju Rinpoche Guti Shapidan.